Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is a special edition of the Kenny and Renny Show. Dare I say it is a bonus edition of the Kenny and Renny Show? That's right. Had to start up the old Kenny and Renny machine because of the big news. Rick Bowness officially named the new head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. We are going to have him on the show in about 5 minutes or so. But before we bring him in, we got to bring Kenny in, and only one of them has that great intro music. So let's get at it right away. Time to bring in Kenny. Kenny, great to see you, my friend. We just came back from a nice trip down to the Stanley Cup Final where you and I both worked, and we're going to keep it rolling. You and I are heading to the draft later this week, and because of that, we should announce that we're having some Kenny and Renny shows to take you through that. How many are we doing in total, Ken?
I think we're going to try to get it to 5. 4 for sure, but I think we're going to try to get a 5 pack for our listeners and viewers in the next couple weeks here, sort of leading into the draft and into free agency and wrapping up both of those things. And we figured we'd start it off with this special edition after the head coaching announcement.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan, this is an offseason that is going to be filled with absolutely a ton of news. And one of the biggest shoes to dropping today, we are going to be in Montreal because we're grinding to make it work. And part of that is finding a way to take care of that. And we're being taken care of by our sponsors, the Johnson Group and Cambrian Credit Union. So, I mean, they are the ones behind this show that we're doing here today. So just to give you a heads up with the Johnson Group, you will not find two businesses with the same challenge, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits proudly administered by our good friends at the Johnson Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and teledoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. And of course, we know it's house hunting season. A lot of people are out there doing that right now. Let our friends at Cambrian help you. If you're thinking of buying a home, it's a good idea to know what you can afford and to get pre-approved. Getting pre-approved for a mortgage is a key step. So when you find that perfect home, you are ready to take advantage. Apply to get pre-approved for a mortgage at cambrian.mb.ca. And once again, we just want to say thank you to them for making this happen for us here today. And, you know, usually we get into the sponsors a little bit later in the show, but we're going to have Rick Bowness coming on any moment here now. So we wanted to make sure that we've got all the space in the world to talk with him. And then we'd love to talk with Timmy Campbell after that as well from NHL.com, who's been a writer in this city for a long time. We were down at the Stanley Cup final with him. If people haven't heard, he's retiring. We were at his going away dinner, but not before he got in to see Rick Bowness, who almost seemed like he is it me, Tim? He said from the podium, am I the reason that you're stepping aside? But no, good stuff there. But Ken, I just right off the bat, just your initial thoughts at this stage after what looked like an exhaustive coaching search. And then, I mean, maybe somewhat of a surprise. I know that Bowness's name came up early, and right off the bat, I thought very interesting. And then kind of seemed to fly below the radar until, boom, here he is, the next coach of the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, it was certainly interesting, Sean. I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, Rick was a guy that we wondered might be involved in an associate or assistant's role. But, I mean, he sort of was there was one under the radar guy that made the interview process to the second interviews, and it was Rick. I mean, that was the one thing. I mean, we've been doing a lot of digging and a lot of due diligence, but he was that mystery name that was out there that nobody really was able to pin down until the announcement came. So Should that be a surprise? No. I mean, Rick is a guy who told us, quite frankly, during his introductory presser, he wasn't in a situation where he didn't have to take a job. I mean, he had three other opportunities, I think, either as an assistant or as an associate, but I guess he felt as though he was waiting for the right call. And when Kevin Cheveldayoff gave him a shout, he started to get the ball rolling. And, by the time the second interview or phone call happened, he had decided that for he and Judy, it would be a great fit to come to Winnipeg. I mean, he feels that this is a team that's on the cusp. I think he was excited about the opportunities. He said, quite frankly, that this has looked like a team that had lost its way over the last season. They didn't look the same as they did the previous 2 years under his tenure. He's very familiar with the roster, having been in the Central Division here for quite a bit of time. And overall, it's really interesting. I mean, I know there's a lot of upheaval on social media and everything else, Sean, but you and I have been around Rick a little bit during one of the series where he was still an assistant with the Dallas Stars, that 2019 year where they went 7 games in double overtime in Game 7 against St. Louis. Rick's the kind of guy that is a treat to talk to, a guy that just oozes passion for the game. And I think this is a smart hire by the Winnipeg Jets. And I think that folks, the more they hear and the more they listen to Rick, I think, they're going to know why he was brought in to take this job.
I mean, I think that this is interesting. The one thing that I've always admired about dealing with Rick Bowness is you ask him a direct question and he gives you a direct answer. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who feels like he needs to hide from anything. So, I mean, one of the questions right off the bat is the idea that there was this very public, attempt to woo Barry Trotz. And, it was maybe the funniest moment of the press conference, but with a guy who knows how to get a laugh out of the audience, as we talked about his interaction with Tim Campbell earlier, but he said, if I was in his position, that's who I would be calling too, was Barry Trotz. So, I mean, I think, this is a guy who's a hockey lifer who you will never find anyone within the game who has a bad word to say about him. He's extremely charming, and I just thought that was right on display right off the bat in his ability to take a situation where, the Jets were pursuing a specific coach. They end up with him. I just think that I'm looking forward to this. We're going to have to try and throw some grenades his way to see if we can disarm him, because I haven't seen it happen yet. I don't like our chances. But I'm just going to see. We've got him on the line. I just want to make sure he's there. Coach, if you are ready to go, give us the thumbs up. Otherwise, if you guys are figuring out technical issues, we'll wait till we see the thumbs up. But was that a thumbs up, Ken? Is that
I think so, yeah. I think I saw a thumbs up there. Yeah,
let's give it a shot. We're going to bring him in. Okay, let's do it. We are so happy to bring in Rick Bowness, the new head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. And I love this right off the bat. He's establishing the brand right away. It's not Rick Bowness in here, it's Bones. So you know what? Why don't you let the audience? I've always been interested in this. I think Bonus, the Bones thing is pretty obvious. But when did you get the nickname? How long have you had it? And is there a story behind it?
My whole career. No, there's no real story behind it. And as I mentioned today, I've been calling some of the players, and they call me Rick. I say, hang on here. You're going to talk to me, man. We're going with Bones. You're going to talk to me, Rick. I don't know who you're talking to. So actually, it's been since I was a player. Bones. It became easier. But now I'm Bones Senior because Ryan's in Ottawa as the assistant general man. He's Bones Junior. I'm Bones Senior. But I go by Bones, and then I know who the heck you're talking to. You start calling me Rick and everything. I'm looking around. Who are you talking to?
Quick one on those fronts. I mean, Rick, we know the passion has always been there, Rick, but where did your passion for the sport originally come from when you got going?
I would say like my dad. My dad was born in Montreal, raised in Montreal, and in that era, that was the time where he became the property of the Montreal Canadiens no matter what, and he signed a C form. So, obviously this is a long time ago, but I grew up with Dad. He went to training camp with the Montreal Canadiens with Jean Beliveau and Maurice Richard and those guys. So, and then when I was a little kid, Dad was playing senior hockey. I would go to the rink with him, and so my dad had a great passion for the game, and he taught me that passion. But I just remember as a little kid going to the rink with Dad, watching him play, watching him practice, and the camaraderie in the room and all that things. So I think it just came from my father. And my brother, he was with me all the time. He didn't have the same passion that I had. So I think that after a while, it just became a natural passion. I love the game. I love playing the game. And as a kid, you always think, oh, well, I just want to play hockey. I want to be a hockey player. It happens to very few guys. I was very fortunate that I was able to make I wasn't a very good player, but I made it to the National Hockey League, and I've been able to make a career out of hockey. But again, I think the passion started then, and I really never lost it, because you think in life, okay. And I remember when I got into coaching, I don't mean to drag this out, but there was always supposed to be a plan B. I never had a plan B. Right? It was we got into coaching, and then we were looking at each other, Judy and I, saying, okay, well, what happens if this doesn't work? And I could never come up with a plan B, because I didn't want to do anything else. So it's just a passion that I've had for the game, and I'll have it till the day I die.
So, Bones, maybe this isn't the best time to ask this question, maybe halfway through the next season or something, but I'm going to ask it anyways, because you've been back to the city quite a bit since it happened. But you coached the Jets in 88, 89. I was in elementary school. I remember it well. We were all excited about it. What's the biggest difference between Winnipeg now and Winnipeg then, outside the loss of Chi-Chi's?
In terms of hockey? In terms of the team?
In terms of anything. I mean, like the city that you left and that you come back to find it now. I'm interested in, the snapshot of what the team was and the hockey culture, the city itself, and compared to what you see it as now.
Well, it was playing in a different arena. We're downtown now. We didn't spend a whole lot of time downtown. When we lived here, we lived in Charleswood. We'd go to the arena back and forth. We didn't get downtown a lot. Now with the rink downtown and coming in as a visiting team and staying downtown, it's a different feel, no question. Because we're just being downtown as opposed to being the arena in Charleswood. But the one thing that's constant with coming into Winnipeg over the years is just the people, friendly people. It's just easy to talk to. It's just a great city to come visit, great visit to come to play in, and it was a great city to live in. But a lot of it has to do with the quality of the people, and you feel very comfortable coming here.
What maybe stood out, or what went through your mind when you got either that first text message or phone call from Kevin Cheveldayoff?
Well, I was very happy to get the call, clearly. A bit surprised, and because everything obviously had been focused on Barry, and you kind of lost track of it a little bit. But I was very surprised, and when I got the call and we were going to have an interview, Judy and I talked, and like as I mentioned earlier, if we're going to go back into it, we're going to make sure we work with good people. So I was very happy with Chevy, because they're great people here with Chevy, Larry, and Zinger, and Mark with the owner. So it was tremendous people. And also the competitiveness of the team. Again, I had turned down a couple of offers of going in and helping a younger coach and kind of rebuild. And I don't want to do that again. I've done that enough. I want to stay in the league and coach. I want to have a chance to win. I believe this team has a good chance to win. We've got the great goalie. We've got the good forwards. We've got a good, solid defense. So all the ingredients you need to have to win are here. And it's going to be up to us to pull it all together. Like I know today's an easy day. It is, right? It's talking to everybody, and they're getting the press release out, getting the press conference over. The hard work starts now, and the hard work really will start in September. But again, it's because of the people, and it's because of the quality of the team that I'm excited about it.
There was a line Kevin Cheveldayoff said today that your hiring today shows that this is an important time for the organization. What I took from that is that Kevin believes that, like you believe, there's a roster that can do something here, and his belief, same belief that you share about yourself, is that you can get this turned around quickly. Is that what you take from that in his assertion that this is an important time and that your hire shows that?
I think anytime you have a team like the Jets that had a good couple of years, and all of a sudden it loses its way a little bit, and all of a sudden you're out of the playoffs. And I think in today's NHL, as we all know, it's hard to make the playoffs. This is a tough league, and you don't want to miss the playoffs for a couple of years in a row. And so when you have a roster and the age of the roster, you know, okay, we've got to get back in the hunt here, got to get our foot back in the door in the playoffs and go from there. But again, you don't want to miss the playoffs a couple of years in a row. It just things start to slide. So with the team we have here, we've got to stop that slide at 1 year and whatever reasons it lost its way, we've got to work very hard, and it's not going to be easy. Listen, it went backwards. We got to get it going on the right track. It's not a switch that we're flicking this switch and we're back to where we were. It's not going to be easy. And it's going to be a lot of hard work from the players, a lot of hard work from the coaches, but we're all willing to do that. So it's an important time, but we all have to dig in here. And again, to think it's just going to happen overnight or happen easily, it's not. It's going to be a lot of hard work, and we all have to be bought in here and make sure that the work is there, the commitment is there, the consistency is there, and then we're going to be okay.
Outside of the familiarity you have with one another, why was it important to have Scott Arniel on the staff?
Well, Arnie and I have known each other for forever, and I played with him a little bit in the '81 season, '82, and coached him there, and we've always had a good rapport. It's important to me to have a good coach on this, an excellent coach, but just as good a person. And Arnie fits that bill. He's an excellent coach. He's had a lot of respect in this league. He's had a lot of success in the league, and it's because he's a good coach. And just as important, he's a good person. He is. He's a wonderful person. He's a wonderful man, good family guy, good values, and he's well respected again inside and outside of the league. So it's important to me when we build our staff, to get good people, the same as the management and ownership, and good communicators. And Arnie fits the bill for sure.
I talked to a current NHL coach one time. It was a little bit of an eye opener for me. I asked him about, coming into town and preparing for guys like Wheeler and Scheifele. And he said, I never prepare for specific players. I prepare for the other coach. And so he really believed in like the coaching matchup and going head to head. I believe in that too, especially in the playoffs. And I believe that, the run that you guys went to the Stanley Cup in 2020, you beat a Jared Bednar led team. You beat a Pete DeBoer led team. Last year, you took, the Jack Adams winning trophy coach to Game 7 overtime. I'm interested in your philosophy. Do you see your role as being, kind of a coach's matchup, especially once you get to the playoffs, or do you minimize that role and say it's a lot more the players speaking for themselves?
I think it's both. You have to know the coach. You have to know his tendencies. You have to know the adjustments he's probably going to make from game to game. But you have to know the players, and you have to know their systems, and you have to. So because the coach is going to take what he has, and you're going to look for the adjustments that you think he's going to make. You try to stay one step ahead of him. You never know until you actually see it. But you have to know the coach. You have to know his strengths. You have to know how he likes to utilize players. His line matchups after they score, after they're scored on, how they're going to change momentum, the adjustments he'll make with his lines. So it is important that you know the coach without a doubt. But then you've got to watch the players and how they're being utilized and the adjustments that they made on the ice. And you've got to be able to make your adjustments as well. So for me, it's both.
Who were some of the coaches that influenced you in the early days, Rick? Maybe first as a player, and then when you made the transition, you had the 1 year as a player coach in Sherbrooke. We'd like to get into that maybe a little bit later. But was there anybody that you really enjoyed playing for, that is sort of part of what molded your philosophy?
I guess I'm really dating myself, but my first year pro was in Tulsa, the Central League, and we won the championship, and the coach was Orland Kurtenbach. And in that era, there was no video. There was no computers. There was no videotape at all. But he let us play. He let us play to our strengths, and that was this big message: just go play. And I've always, when I got into coaching, I'm going to coach the way I wanted to be coached, and that's let you have the freedom to play. Now, as time went on, Tom Watt was a good influence on me as well, because Tom was the first guy who came in with the Hockey Canada background that I played for, that I was around, and the importance of preparation and details to practice, detail to your meet. He was the first coach that I played for that wasn't an ex-player, and because every coach I played for was an ex-player, and it was go out there and work hard and do your best. But Tom had his practices organized. He had drills organized. So he was the first player coach that I played for. And I know that's a while ago. That was that Hockey Canada background. But then after that, I think as a coach, I always say, we're going to do it my way. Every coach has their own way of doing things. And you can't be somebody else. You have to be yourself. And like I said, if I'm going to coach, I'm going to coach the way I wanted to be coached. I think it cost me my job in Boston, to be honest, because in that era, it was old school. It was, don't communicate is my way or the highway. I was the exact opposite of that. I was kind of, I'm going to talk to the players. I'm going to communicate with the players. I don't think it went over with management, which was fine. If you're going to lose your job, lose your job doing it your way. That's just life. And so other than those two guys, I've just kind of done it my way and made a lot of mistakes. Made some career decisions that probably weren't the best, right? That kind of held me back. But I learned from everything. I didn't dwell on the past. I looked at the past, learned from it, and moved on and got ready for the next day. But I've kind of coached my own way, and very comfortable doing it. And again, if it costs you your job doing it your way, it's a whole lot better than losing your job trying to be somebody you're not, trying to do somebody else's the way they did things. I've always done it my way, right or wrong. That's the way we're going to do it.
That's great advice in life. One of our audience members wants to know what your anti-aging secrets are. We're not going to get you to go into the beauty care routine, although I am going to get you to do it off air because I could use some of those tips. But one of the challenges you're going to be facing here is correcting the room, which, there was a lot of talk towards the end from the players. It got a little bit open. It seemed like there were some issues in there. You used a line today, and I loved it. You said, "I hate gray areas." How does eliminating gray areas help in setting a room in the direction it needs to go?
Well, that's the message from the coaching staff. So it all goes back to what is and isn't acceptable play behavior. So I meet with every player when I can, and you talk about, okay, this is acceptable with your play. This isn't. So when we start seeing this in, we're going to correct it. Your behavior, your work habits, what is and what isn't acceptable. And it's very important from the coaching, the community, the communication part of that. That's how you get it across. This is what we expect. And these are the standards that we want to apply to. And we need everyone to apply to that and reach those standards. And when they come underneath, then it's up to the coach to address it with the player. Then it's up to the player to make some adjustments to the way he does things. So a lot of it is what is and what isn't acceptable. And if you do that, this is acceptable, this isn't. There's no gray area in there, right? This is acceptable, this isn't. And so that kind of how it helps eliminate that gray area.
And when it comes to the communication that you talked about, how have you been able to forge those connections the way that you have throughout your entire career, and to be able to adapt to the modern player that you touched on earlier on today as well?
Yeah, listen, every generation changes, and if you go back to that. The line in the Moneyball when Brad Pitt's firing the head coach, he tells him, adapt or die, man. So I guess this kind of just been a natural thing for me over the years. You can see the game changing. You can see the attitudes of the players changing. They're not going to change that much for you. This is how they were born. This is how they were raised. This is how they've been treated, working their way into the National Hockey League. You've got to find a way to communicate with them because that's what they've done their whole life. And you've got to find a relate to relate to them. And again, this era of my way or the highway, long gone. You've got to find a way to get them on board. And the only way to do that is to talk to them, find out, spend as much time as you can with each individual guy, find out their background, find out everything you can about them, what makes them happy, what makes them tick, what they don't like. And it takes a little time to watch their habits, takes a little time talking to them. But again, it's always going to go back to the communication. So that's the biggest thing for me, is to be able to relate to these players and just show that you care. I have to show the players that I care about them, and I do. I love all the players that I play for now. Some of them hate you because you don't play them enough and all that. That all comes with the territory. But I want all of my players, at least you may not like how I utilize you, but you're going to respect the fact that I do care about you and I care about your career.
You'd alluded to the Jets, having success in 2018, kind of tailing off after that, and the need to kind of pull out of that, nosedive, if you will. I don't want to make it sound too dramatic. I covered the 2015 Cup final when you were in Tampa, when you became a storyline as that series went on. And I know you weren't with them for a long time, but this is a team that, had success kind of nosed down a little bit and then has pulled up, and we all know what Tampa's done ever since. I know that you weren't with them the entire time that happened, but are there lessons you take away from them, and if not them, other teams that you've coached in the past to kind of address what you're seeing right now with the Jets?
Well, if you go back to that Tampa team, so they were built one way. They were going to score goals. And when we went to the finals that year, we weren't ready in some key areas. And that what got exposed the year they had that great year, and then they lost 4 straight to Columbus. They weren't going to win in the playoffs the way they were playing hockey. So if you recall that, they went out and changed probably half their roster. And they got that third and fourth line grinders. It wasn't all just about scoring goals and looking pretty doing it, because they had a ton of talent. They had to learn how to play in the playoffs. And that 4-game sweep of Columbus opened up their eyes. Columbus battled them. They played hard. They competed and made it physical, made it hard for the elite players to play. And Tampa really had no response to that. So what do? They changed some of half their team. Probably 8 guys, and they changed the way those guys played it. You got to remember, those Stanley Cups, the third and fourth line for Tampa Bay were huge. They scored the goals that won series and won the cup. So you look at Tampa and you say, okay, this is what they were, but then they could win defensively. They could win hard physical play, and you have to be able to do both in today's NHL. So the lessons I learned from Tampa is that you've got to be able to, you're not going to be able to play in the win in the National League just by scoring goals. You're just not. You look at Colorado; they knew how to buckle down in that game. They won 2-1. They didn't try to win that game 5-1. They tried to win the game 2-1. So it shows you've got to have your scorers. Your grinders have got to be effective, and you've got to have, and then everyone is playing their role, and then you can play you can play any type of game the opposition wants to play. You want to play fast? We can play fast. You want to play physical? We can play physical. So you've got to be able to adjust your team in those areas, and that's what Tampa did a really good job of. They just kind of rebuilt the team, rebuilt their attitude, rebuilt the way they were going to play, and it worked.
Derek Laxdal told me a great story on the weekend about how it's sort of a misnomer. People think you're a defensive coach, Rick, but it's more about the checking part so that you can get to the fun part of the game. How do you get to that point where people are committed, whether it's on back pressure or knowing your assignments and routes, in order to get people to understand that if you're committed to checking, you'll have the puck more and can get on the offensive attack more?
Well, exactly. And that goes back to our sales pitch and our ability to communicate that message to our team. You want to win? You've got to play well without the puck. You've got to play hard without the puck. If you go back to Dallas before we got there, they could score, but they missed the playoffs. So what's the point? We're all in it to win. You got to find a way to win. Those guys learned, okay, we're going to win and we're going to move forward. We got to play better defense, and they bought into it. Now you're not trying to stifle them. You want to get them the puck as quick as you can, but you lose the puck. You got to have 5 guys working together to get it back. If you've got 2 guys working to get it back and the other guy's waiting for the puck, you're going to spend a lot of time in your zone. You're not going to win. Eventually, you are not going to win. You need 5 guys to play exactly what you talked about. Back pressure, coming back in the defensive zone hard, knowing your responsibilities, knowing your coverage, so you can get the puck back quicker and you can have a lot of fun with it, especially with the skill level this team has. So listen, when I was in Vancouver, led the league in scoring. Tampa, we led the league in scoring, but we got the puck back. And when you get the puck back, now it's the skill level of the players. Now you work on your breakouts, you work on your entries, you work on your ozone play and all those things, and we do that every day. Eventually, it's going to come down to the ability of the player to put the puck in the net. But you've got to be able to play 5 men getting that puck back and 5 guys working to keep the puck and have some fun with it, make some plays, get some goals.
Chevy had a real interesting comment today in that the process of going and interviewing all these different coaches is a real education, right? You get all these brilliant hockey men come rolling in and giving you an idea of what they think your team needs and how they would address that. It's a crash course in what maybe ailing your team. I wonder, and I don't want to dig too deep, or I mean, as deep as you want to go. I don't want you to be giving up too much, but I wonder what you feel. Never mind dealing with the players. I wonder what you feel you are able to teach up in the organization, information from your long life in hockey that you're able to kind of illuminate Chevy in his role, or maybe even Mark Chipman in his role.
Well, again, it's my experiences that I've had with different organizations, with different players. They want to include me in all those discussions. They're going to hear what I have to say. So the general managers are sometimes around the league. You coach the players we got, and we'll take care of the rest. Jimmy Neal was good. We had a lot of communication. Chevy and Mark can be really good. They're going to ask me my opinion on players I've coached, on my opinion on what we need. I'm going to give it to them. And again, sometimes you're hearing things you don't want to hear. You can't be afraid of those conversations. If it's an honest conversation, have it. But I know that's what I mean. They're good people. When they're making decisions on players, I'll be included. I'll give them my input. The decisions on who's here, that's their final call. If they want my opinion, they're going to get it.
You touched on the Colorado Avalanche briefly in the answer about Tampa, or the question about Tampa. What does it mean when the gold standard resides in your division and the Stanley Cup champion is there for the teams to be chasing, if you will?
This is the toughest division in hockey. As I mentioned earlier, Minnesota, great team. St. Louis, great team. Like Dallas, really good team. Winnipeg, really good team. You've got to somehow find a way to so you got to deal with the Colorado Avalanche every game. They're a great hockey team. You got to find ways to beat them. But if you find those ways to stay competitive with them and eventually beat them, you're going to become the next Stanley Cup champion. You're going to be the top of the team in the division. But right now, it's a matter of finding a way to slow down Colorado and try to emulate what they do and beat them at their whatever game works to beat them. So that's a good challenge for all of us. And you've got to have the depth that they have, the speed that they have. They are fast, and they got every line coming at you with fast and their speed, and they handle the puck. So you've got to find ways to skate with them. You've got to find ways to slow them down when you have to. And you've got to find ways just to keep their top end guys under control a little bit. So that is the great challenge of it. Okay, now we got the defending Stanley Cup champions in our division. That's the standard. Now we've got to keep pushing to get to close that gap with them.
I like how you talked earlier about the importance of, when a team dips below the playoff line, you don't want to hang out below there for a while. You want to correct things as quickly as you can. I'm guessing that comes with a sense of urgency that you start with this already. When you take a look at this roster and some of the players like Mark Scheifele, you've got him under contract for 2 more years. Pierre-Luc Dubois, 2 more years. Your goaltender, who you've brought up a number of times, Blake Wheeler, your captain. Does that add to the sense of urgency? And is a sense of urgency something you embrace, or is that something you kind of have to shield out and ignore?
No, I think you embrace it. All I can, I haven't had a chance to talk to Blake yet. We've played phone tag, but I could sense that urgency in Mark Scheifele and Connor. Like there's an urgency to them. They don't like where they finished last year. They don't like missing the playoffs. So that sense of urgency, that's going to come from those guys. They want to make the playoffs. They don't like how the team looked last year. They don't like they missing the playoffs. So will we communicate that? Will we be on top of that? Absolutely. Does that sense of urgency have to come from the players? Yes, absolutely it does. But for the conversations I've had with these guys so far, I hear it in their voice. I sense it, and they want to get back on the ice and they want to redeem themselves. So that sense of urgency, we're going to be communicating as a staff with all the players, but eventually it has to come from the players themselves. And from the good news is, from what I'm seeing and talking to these guys, they feel it and they want to get back on the ice and they want to redeem themselves.
Yeah, you said that was part of where the buy-in starts. I know there's some things that have to stay private, but what was it about the conversation with Mark Scheifele that told you that he was all in?
Just his tone, like the tone. You could hear the passion, and I loved it. Because again, I know what all the conversations were going on at the end of the year. I'm not sure how it wasn't misconstrued, whatever. It's not important right now. What's important that I just sense and heard a passion in his voice that he wants to get back on the ice and he wants to help lead this team back into respectability, back into the playoffs. So it was more the tone of his voice, the passion in his voice, and the points he were making were very, very legitimate. And they were right on from anything I understand that went on here. So I think it was more of that. And he was accepting responsibility as one of the better players. But it was more the tone and the passion of his voice that really excited me.
I personally, Bones, was really surprised when I heard that you weren't going to be back with the Dallas Stars. Based on your body of work over the last little while, you did a great job of explaining it today. And one of the things that you brought up was, sensing that there maybe needed to be a new voice there. We know what that's like here in Winnipeg. It's what Paul Maurice said when he left the team earlier last year. So I wonder, as a coach, if you could give us an idea of what are some of the telltale signs that you see in a roster that maybe they need a new voice other than the one you're providing?
That's a good question, and that's a tough answer. I think it goes back. I just think it goes back to our feel, our walking into the room, the preparation, the bench. It's a lot of little things that you feel, and you start to see a little bit. So you can see things creeping in that weren't there before. You can see body language that you didn't see before. You could feel something on the bench or walking into the locker room that you didn't quite feel before. It's just a bunch of little things that add up. And I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but sometimes you got to go with your gut. You got to go with your instincts. And if you feel that, then it's time. A different voice. I don't like the fact what's going on around the league. Coaches every 3 years now. Like that bothers me a lot. You look at Tampa; they've got one coach. Or been there one coach a long time. So it goes back to your players and everything. There's just a lot of little things involved there. It's not an easy question to answer. It's just feel and seeing what you see, what you feel. And sometimes you need a couple of trades to shake things up. And if they don't, then you just need maybe it's time. I think that's just more by feel, and it is. I don't know if I'm explaining that properly. It just goes by feel more than anything.
How are you able to navigate the potholes? I mean, sometimes when you have a team in transition where, Jamie and Tyler had been the guys for so long, and then you have the emergence of a Rope Hintz and a Jason Robertson. How do you keep the buy-in from those guys and knowing that their role is still important, even though their minutes might be reduced slightly?
Well, it's not so much their minutes, but I think the players see that as well. I think those two guys you're talking about, they saw how good the chemistry that they had and the results they were getting. So sometimes you say, wow, that's working. That line's really good. So let them go. Like the players want to win too. Like Jamie and Tyler, they want to win just as bad as anybody. So if their role changed a little bit, they didn't let their ego get in their way. They put the team first, and they said, "Wow, that line is that's our best line." And I kept telling Rupe, "You're our best forward. Take over, take charge. You're a guy. Robo, you're our best goal scorer." It takes a little while for those guys to get over the hump on that, and it's not Jamie now, it's not Sagi now, it's you guys. That wasn't an easy transition for them. I found them reluctant to take that role. I had to keep pushing them. Like, listen, it's your time now. It's just, you are the best players we have. Take over. And that wasn't an easy thing for them. It was more of them accepting that responsibility and moving past Jamie and Sagi than it was Jamie and Sagi. But Jamie and Tyler, they want to win. They saw how good that line was, and that helps as well. Now, if you're putting players out there that aren't producing and aren't doing as much as they did, then you have a whole other problem. But fortunately, that wasn't the issue. The issue, listen, they're our best line. They're going to play in those situations. Here's your might go now second power play unit, and they accepted it without any issue. Their numbers weren't as good. They've all dropped over the last couple of years. Hopefully, they can get it going back again. But for that transition, it was me more pushing Rupe and Robo to get them over the hump of we're taking over from Jamie and Tyler as the top guys than it was anything else. Jamie and Sagi, they were the easy part. pushing the other two, that was more of the challenge.
Ken and I have both been lucky enough to cover a number of series that you've been either assistant coach or coach on. And so clearly we still have a lot that we're going to need to learn about you and your tendencies and so on and so forth. But one thing that you've talked about a lot already today, and one thing that kept coming up time and time again, every time I've talked with players who've worked with you, is your ability to have those tough conversations, the one you said that you'll have with Mark and Chevy, the ones that you'll have with your players, and that your willingness to do so, your ability to do so. Did that come built in? Did that come from your dad? When did you learn that was a direct, handling things direct was the way to do it in the NHL? Because I don't think every coach does that.
It's when I go back to say, if I'm going to coach the way I wanted to be as a player. I wanted to be coached. I had a coach once, and I went in. I sat on the bench the whole game, and I went in the next day. I said, just give me something that I can work on so I can play a little bit more. And he said, well, you got to work harder. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's all I've got, man. All I've got is passion. All I got is a hard work. Give me something better than that. And he couldn't. So that's what I'm telling myself. Well, I'm going to coach. And the player's going to come. I got to give him something, whether he wants to hear it or not. I'd rather give him something that he doesn't want to hear than tell him something that doesn't make any sense. So I think it just goes back to me saying, when I coach, I'm going to coach the way I wanted to be coached. And if there's tough conversations, don't be afraid of them. You got to look them in the eye. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. But I'd rather that than beat around the bush and give them something that doesn't mean anything.
Just a quick philosophical question. In modern day, are you a guy who looks more of a traditional top six, bottom six, or are you more of a top nine and have a checking line, or how do you sort of view that with the roster that you currently have, or will that be something that's in transition?
When I get to know the team a lot better, I think that's going to be an easier question to answer. The score of the game, how things are going, the tempo of the game, how each line is playing. Sometimes you shorten the bench. Sometimes you're rolling four lines because all lines are going and no one deserves to sit. So a lot of that is knowing, when I get to know the personnel better, a lot of that is based on the flow of the game. And there was times last year that we like to roll four lines when there's a lot of games. If it's not going, you shorten your bench and you go with the three lines that are going. Doesn't mean it's the top three lines. Maybe your fourth line is out there creating a chemistry and creating energy. Let them play. Don't let them sit. And I was always a fourth line player, and I always knew when, okay, we got this team going. We're banging guys. We're getting them going, and then we'd sit, right? Because the other guys are going. You play the guys that you feel are going. And that's an inexact science. Sometimes you're playing the guys that you think are going, but somebody else might not think that way. But that's the way it is. But for me, it all depends on the tempo of the game and the players you have and the roles that they have. And I'll be able to answer that question when I get to know our team a little bit better.
So, Bones, if you ever make the mistake of saying yes to coming on the Kenny and Renny show again, the one thing
I'm not putting my thumbs up. Is that
it? Blink twice if you're being held against your will.
The one thing you need to know is you need to self-regulate. Like, we're going to keep talking to you until you go. So, give us two more questions, guys, or something like that.
No problem. We all have a job to do, and we all got to work together.
Excellent. I'm really interested in your path from being, a head coach earlier on in your career, an assistant coach. You've head coached a number of teams, been an assistant coach for a long time. I was really interested when you did when you took Dallas on that run to the Stanley Cup final in 2020. And it seemed like, if I remember correctly, it went into the offseason, and I would have thought it would have been an obvious that you would have stayed there as the head coach, which you did, but it didn't seem like you were entirely sold on that. And I'm interested in, the path that you've gone from being. I know you said earlier today you've never held a lot with labels, associate coach, assistant coach, head coach, as long as you're coaching. But I wonder what that path back to being a head coach, to being the number one guy on the coaching staff, has been like, and kind of your philosophy on returning to that spot.
Well, firstly, sometimes you're an assistant coach and you can see the team sliding, you're not playing well, and okay, something's going to happen here. When I took over in Dallas, it was the exact opposite. We were playing well. And on one night, I'm going to bed as the assistant. Next morning, I'm coming to the rink, and you're now the head coach. And wow, I wasn't ready for that. Even though a coach as long as I have, you have to. Yeah. Anyways, it's thrown at you. Don't see it coming at all, and so it took me a little while to get back into the being a head coach again and making the decisions and people coming after you, the media coming after you, trainers coming after you, players coming after you. It's a totally different role. It did take me a while to get back to used to that, managing your time, managing people differently. As the associate and assistant coach, I always ran the D and the penalty kill. You work with a small group of guys and you build a nice rapport with them. Well, now you're all of a sudden in that quick that, oh, you're now the head coach, you're in charge of everything. It took a little while to get back to being comfortable with that because it had been a long time since I had been the head coach. And you just kind of get into that role and you kind of go with it and you're very comfortable with it. So now I had to get out of my comfort zone as quick as I could. And again, because the team was playing so well, it wasn't like I was going to have to change anything. But when the season went into the pause because of COVID, and then we were coming back to training camp in June or July, whatever crazy thing that was, we had met as a staff and said, okay, how do we take this team to the next level? And we had to get more goals. So we had to get our defense involved. So that's kind of when I really took over and said, okay, this is what we had time to make adjustments. We had time to make changes. And that was kind of like the head coach coming in saying, okay, this is what we're doing. And this is the changes that we're going to make. When your team was playing well like we were, you're not going to go in there and make a lot of changes. But when we had the pause, first of all, we weren't playing well when the pause hit, which is okay. You're going to go through those things. But when we came out of the pause and we went to that training camp, we had a new plan. And that's kind of when the head coach kind of thing took over again.
Bones, I just want to say we really appreciate the time you gave us here. You gave us far too much time. Not for us. We'll take as much as we'll take, but we didn't deserve that much time. We appreciate it. And we got to say we're looking forward to this era. I've always enjoyed covering you. I've always enjoyed you talk about, having tough conversations. I find that has always applied to you in the media as well. When you are asked tough questions, you always kind of tackle them head on, and it never kind of seems like it's something that rubs you the wrong way. So I'm looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to see what happens. I think it's an exciting time for the Winnipeg Jets, and hopefully it's an exciting time for you.
Thanks very much. And I wish we had that magic switch to flick. We're turning everything around. It's going to take a little time. It's going to take a lot of hard work, but we're all in, and we're going to get it done.
Appreciate that.
Thanks,
Thank
Rick.
you so much. And enjoy your summer.
All right. You too.
All right. And let's jump right from there and bring in Timmy Campbell, who is going to have a heck of a perspective here because he's been working the beat a long time. Retiring. We're so upset about it. We were already at the retirement party. But this is, retro night. I bugged him about asking what's changed other than Chi-Chi's being shuttered and the arena moving downtown. But I'm interested in your perspective, Tim. How much have you seen of Bones over the years since he's left Winnipeg? And how much evolution, how much growth have you seen out of him?
Well, he's an interesting character, guys. As you well know, everybody knows the resume. You can look back into I believe it was 83, 84 when his coaching actually began in the Jets organization. So I don't know. For me, I had that early encounter when I first came to Winnipeg. I was less than 2 years on the job when the Jets promoted him from coach in Moncton to coach of the Jets. And that was the very beginning, if you'll recall, the Mike Smith era. John Ferguson had been just relieved of his duties. I think it would be about maybe 3 to 4 months before Rick was named coach. But the season started badly, and that's why Fergie was fired. And it didn't really get any better under Dan Maloney. And, the team, I think they'd lost 7 of 8 when Rick was called on to come up and coach the team. And it really didn't get a whole lot better for the rest of the season. So, the early encounter was a sort of a positive one, but of a guy trying to, stop a sinking ship. And that ship just kept on sinking. They made some big changes in that off season, as I recall. That's when Bob Murdoch came in to coach Winnipeg. And that was the very end of the Dale Hawerchuk era. And, Dale, though the team went up the next year, Dale was very unhappy with his role. It was a pretty hard 4-line game. And roster used top to bottom, whereas Dale had always been used to having his whopper share of ice time. So, I mean, that as it may, Rick, went a different way. I remember talking with him fairly often when he was the coach of the Ottawa Senators, and just, thinking, oh my gosh, these poor guys, like, this team is so bad. How in February do you get up and go to the rink with any joy, with any enthusiasm, when it's going this badly? And, he persevered through some really, really awful times there as well. So, there were some not so great stops along the way, but I think the thing that I admired the most was his persistence. And then he got hooked up with Alain Vigneault in the Vancouver Canucks organization. And to me, that was such a good marriage. He was a good complement to Alain's style, and, a good rapport. He's always had a good rapport with players. And, I really think he thrived in that culture there in Vancouver. And I don't want to say it was all his doing, but it was some of his doing. They had good chemistry and a good mix in Vancouver. They knew how to use their players. And, and then he went from that to the Tampa situation, where, I think he made a lot of friends and a lot of admirers for his coaching work in that organization. I mean, that's pre-Stanley Cup Lightning, but it was in the formative years. I mean, remember writing about Rick and talking to a lot of people about Rick 2 years ago in the bubble in Edmonton. And one of the big fans, the rah-rah guys about Rick Bowness was Victor Hedman. One of the best human beings Victor said he's ever met. Helped him immensely when he was a young player, get his career kind of on the right rails and give him the right perspective. So there are many examples of that along Rick's way. And I guess the big point is this, Sean and Kenny, that, Rick's best work is his most recent work. He has a long resume, but nobody this week hired Rick Bowness because he was the coach of the Jets in the 90s, or he tried to be the coach of a really bad Senators team, after that. And some of those tough early jobs he had, nobody's hired him because of that. I think his best work is his most recent work, and it stands out. And I think we saw that on display today at the Canada Life Center. He's kind of a disarming, personal guy. You guys have just experienced, some one-on-one time with him. It's really easy to talk to, and he knows what he has to say. And I don't know, my experience with him overall is he gets along with people. I mean, that's away from the rink as well. I've had some golf experiences in the past with Rick, and, he's someone you just want to spend a day with. So this is the kind of guy they've asked to come in here and straighten out the issues. And, they are really relying on the whole package, not just Rick Bowness's X's and O's and, secret confidence conversations that'll be held in the back rooms. It's the whole package. Rick Bowness, the guy, who Rick Bowness is, he's, that's the thing that's going to help straighten this Jets team out. This is why True North, I think, has hired him.
Timmy, you know both guys really well, and it's interesting when two guys they've competed for jobs against one another before. They're intimately familiar with one another. Why do you think this partnership with Scott Arniel as the associate and Rick as the head coach has the potential to have success?
I think it's got a lot of potential because these guys have been in sync for a long, long time. I mean, they coached and played together in the 80s. I mean, when Rick turned from playing to coaching, he was connected to Scott Arniel in that Jets era way back when, and it's gone right through. This morning before I went down to the rink for the press conference, I actually went into this file that I had compiled in 2020 when the bubble was going on. One of the projects I did when the playoffs were on that year was to write a feature story about Rick, and let's delve into a little bit of why he's having this success with Dallas. And so I made a long list of people I might or should try to talk to. I think that I had probably had about 30 different names on it, and from teammates to fellow coaches to, associates and other people he's dealt with in different organizations over the year. And what I found was kind of what Chevy joked about a little bit today, that Chevy said today, in case anyone hadn't heard, that he was probably one of the only players in the existence of professional hockey that Rick hasn't coached. Well, they were already talking that way in 2020. about him. I mean, he worked for Jim Nill that time, and Jim and him were connected to the Jets of the past. And he said about Calgary that year, they put Calgary out, I believe, in that playoffs. That Calgary, he looked down that Calgary roster and he couldn't find anybody he coached before or had any connections to, summer connections. And he actually couldn't believe it himself that he'd been in the game that long, but he found a team that he had absolutely no connections to. So, it's the connections and, that make it. And that's where we go to Scott Arniel, that these guys are so connected. I actually spoke to Scott Arniel about this piece I wrote. It's only 2 years ago. It's not even 2 years ago. And, the quotes were extensive about, he's not probably known as the greatest strategist of all times. He didn't invent the left wing lock, but he connects with players, and he connected with me all these years ago. It's why we're still friends and colleagues and connected. And, Scott raged on and on and on about what a good fit he's been in Dallas and why these players will play so hard for him. So if there's anyone out there that knows Rick Bowness in terms of the person Rick Bowness and the coach Rick Bowness, I think Scott Arniel has he's obviously made an effort to keep that friendship up and that relationship up over the years. So to me, these guys, it's going to be like having one brain in charge of what's going on. So you can already, I think, assume cohesiveness and, being on the same page, a consistent message that they'll be a unified group trying to lead this Jets team.
This question may kind of go counter to what you were just talking about, because clearly one of the things that makes him a special coach and has kept him around for a long time is his ability to have relationships with his players, his ability to get buy-in from his players. Not as known as much, to your point, as a tactician, but I see a coach who in the last 3 years, four coaches have gone to the Stanley Cup final in the last 3 years. He's one of them. On the way there, he knocked off Jared Bednar in a far superior Colorado Avalanche team, and he knocked off Pete DeBoer and a far superior Vegas Golden Knights team. And then this year, he took the Jack Adams winning coach to 7-game overtime this year. Now, he had a hot goaltender. No one's denying that. But, there's some defensive prowess that's built into that system. And that series looked a certain way. It was a defensive grind. Yes, Calgary scored a lot. Calgary got a lot of shots, but it was a grind, that series. So I wonder... I wanted your take on him as a tactician. I don't know if you were on when he was talking about how he sees his philosophy and going head-to-head as a coach. But I guess, as the coach of the Winnipeg Jets, how often do you think the Jets are poised to walk into a building and be out-coached tactics-wise with Rick Bowness on their bench?
Well, that seems unlikely to me, Sean, right out of the gate. And your examples are really strong. I'll go back to what I said to you a little bit earlier, that Rick's best work is, the last give or take 10 or 12 years. Shouldn't that be the way it is with a coach?
Yeah.
You would think a coach who can adapt and learn and adjust and, maximize the return of his players, that would be kind of his trajectory. I guess there are some coaches in the history of the league who maybe would hit the hill on the back nine and start to go down. But Rick's 67, that's no secret. But to me, his best work is recently. And what you say, he fit into the Vancouver system. He fit into the Tampa system. They hired him in Dallas to be more of a support guy because they were trying to implement a new coach there, Jim Montgomery, who had very, almost no NHL experience, but, was kind of one of these up and coming rising stars. So Rick Bowness was there for a reason. Not to hold his hand or, again, what I said before, not because he was a coach in the 80s or 90s of some really bad teams. He was there because his recent work was good and, on ascending teams and teams near the top. So, that kind of work where you can recognize, what talent is available to you, what's on your bench, what's the first line strength, what's our defensive strength, what does our goalie do well? How should we play to get the most out of these guys? I really think you've hit it on the head. I remember those playoffs in the bubble where Dallas just kept on surprising people. Suddenly the Vegas Golden Knights, forgot how to score. Or did they forget how to score? Did they just play against a team that was ready and maybe better prepared to play their way. And, the team that can play their way more and longer is going to be usually the team that goes on. Is that what Dallas did to Vegas that year? Well, and Colorado as well. Okay, well, there were some lucky breaks along the way. Colorado had their goaltending issues, as I recall. And, Vegas had some injuries. But all those things aside, everybody's got those issues. Who can convince their players to do it a certain way longer than the other team? To me, that was the story of the Stanley Cup final this year. You mentioned Jared Bednar and John Cooper, two elite coaches, nose to nose. And what happened? Well, Colorado, to me, played their game earlier and more often and for longer than Tampa Bay was able to. We can get into the whys and whats, but that's basically what happened. That's good coaching. Like you said, we've seen this from Rick Bowness in recent times with Dallas. Again, this year, they maximized, their strength. He told me after the scrums today, he goes, we weren't a 115-point team in Dallas. We got everything out of this team we could get out of them. We played a certain way. We played to our strengths, give us the best chance to win in that first round. I'm not sure that many people had the Stars giving Calgary a scare. Maybe a few. There's always some wild upset picks out there, but that looked to be one of the biggest mismatches of the first round, and it turned out to be, the overtime nail biter. And I would say the players had the most to do with it, but coaching had something to do with it.
Tim, given how well you know his personality, some coaches would get their nose out of joint being the second choice. What did you think about the way that Rick leaned into I would have been talking to Barry first, and what does that say about him as an individual?
Well, I thought the two of them handled that quite well today. Just from a fan's perspective, if I'm interested in that, I'm looking in to see how that was addressed today. It's for some people, it's a big elephant in the room. So turn around and say hello to the elephant. What's the big deal about it? I'll refer back to the story I did 2 years ago. And again, try not to pat myself on the back here. That's not me. But one of the people I have, quoted from that story 2 years ago was Barry Trotz himself. Never claimed to know Rick Bowness intimately. They're not tight friends. They've been colleagues. And, there they were in the bubble 2 years ago, and Barry was throwing out bouquets to a colleague who he admired how he was getting his team to sort of buy in and play hard. 2 years after the fact, those words ring to me even more genuine and pertinent than they were at the time. And they were very helpful at the time. It's nice to hear compliments from others about a certain person. Pete DeBoer was another who, said he really didn't know Rick that well 2 years ago. But in the coaching fraternity of the events they have and the odd conversations they do have, the highest regard for someone like that, someone you'd want to, like I said, spend a day with or an outing with, just, a personable guy, someone who gives you a good vibe. Barry Trotz was already saying those things about Rick Bowness 2 years ago. He said today he got a text from Barry earlier this weekend. So, how did they handle it? Well, Rick doesn't seem to be bothered in the least. I again asked him about that afterwards. And again, what he told everyone was what he told me, and I'm sure what he'll continue to say. I would have done that, for heaven's sakes. I would have, if I was the GM, I would have called Barry Trotz first. So he's not bothered by it. He's always been his own man, and he'll tell you this until, the day he's not here anymore. He's always going to do things his own way, the Rick Bowness way. He doesn't have a Scotty Bowman playbook. He doesn't have the Jacques Lemaire playbook. He doesn't have any of those playbooks. He does his thing. He's going to do it his way. He's going to talk to the players his way. He's going to talk to all of us his way. And I think people are going to find it unique. And in some ways, I hope they find it a bit refreshing.
I think refreshing is the perfect word for it. Tim, in talking about a coach who's got an amazing depth of perspective from his time in the league, we could have brought in someone better to bring in depth of perspective from the journalistic side of things here. Just want to last quick question, just on you personally. What's the future hold for Tim Campbell? How much longer can people read your work? Was this the last we saw of you today?
Today may be the last on NHL.com. I am headed for retirement. here later this month. There's just going to be a lot more me time. One of the things I've missed in the last number of years is golf. So me and golf are going to get to know each other again a little better, and I look forward to the most, I think.
Oh, not everyone can be like Ken and play 200 games a year while still holding down
I
a
aspire
job.
to that, though. Yeah.
Well, we'll
Tim,
look forward to the next round together. That's for sure.
I got to say this, Tim, for the time that I got to spend on the job with you there, it's been an honor to do so. What a phenomenal career. I'm sure our audience feels the same way. Kenny will speak for himself, but I know he feels that way. But so you know what? If we're getting you right on your way out, what a get for KNR here tonight. Thank you so much, and great job, great career.
Well, thanks to both of you, and it's been my privilege to cover so much in the way of sports here in Winnipeg and in other places, and one of the best gifts is being able to hang around with guys like you all the time. It's been a lot of fun, and that I'm sure I will miss.
Phenomenal stuff.
Yeah,
Thank you so much,
Appreciate
Tim.
it.
Have a great day, guys.
We'll see you on the golf course.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Ken, first, before I want you to close out, we got to kind of share our thoughts on this, but I just wanted to, again, say thank you so much to the Johnson Group for helping sponsor us here today, making sure that we got this show out there, and the shows that's coming up week that we're very excited for. And, of course, just wanted to give a shout-out to Cambrian, who also are helping us get this done, just a list of the sponsorships that they've provided in our community and the donations that they've provided. Phenomenal organization. We're so proud to have both of them on board. Just one last time, thank you so much for your support. It means the world to us. And Ken, go. What does this all mean to you today?
Oh, just fantastic stuff. I mean, we were looking forward to having Rick on. I mean, we weren't sure how long we'd have him, but as we've come to know or realize about Rick over the years, open book, right? I mean, we got to know a little bit more about Rick the person, about Rick and his philosophy. And, this guy's a straight shooter. I mean, he oozes passion. And he wasn't afraid of the hard questions. I mean, I know that a lot of our listeners and viewers have been wondering about Mark Scheifele. Rick Bowness isn't here to snow you. If he didn't hear passion in Mark Scheifele's voice, he wouldn't be pretending like he did. So I know there's been a lot of debate as to what direction the Jets might be going here in the offseason. I think that we're going to see a rejuvenated Mark Scheifele. And I'll use Ryan O'Reilly as an example. And yes, it took a trade for Ryan O'Reilly to find that passion again after he left the Buffalo Sabres for the St. Louis Blues. And I'm not comparing Ryan O'Reilly to Mark Scheifele. He's a way different player. But I think for all the people that were worried about Mark Scheifele, I think Mark skates with Ryan O'Reilly on occasion. I think he is going to sort of get back in the hot tub time machine and remember that he loves hockey. I mean, this is a guy who entered the organization as someone who loves the game. I think his joy level has been low the last couple of years during the pandemic seasons. And I think Mark is going to be poised to embracing that leadership role and getting back to being the player, the two-way player that we've come to see, and maybe even a better version of that, to be honest.
I got to say this. I was out at the Lactabani Fair. I'm from Lactabani. I was out it was the big weekend, and so shared some news about this. I took a look at this, and I'll be honest, Ken, some of the hires that we were expecting, I know that there was a lot of talk about Rick Tocchet. Not to go at it, and maybe I shouldn't, but I would have a much different perspective on this if they would have hired Rick Tocchet. And I think there's a lot of people out there who saw the Jets getting with Rick Bowness ahead of Rick Tocchet as being a downgrade. I took a battering on Twitter for saying that I love this move. People were accusing me of being, having the true north write my tweets for me. And I got to say this. I'm blown away that there is that perspective out there. I mean, I know that there was a lot of people who were attacking the age of Rick Bowness, which to me is absolutely irrelevant. I don't know why we go there. He's shown he's a current coach no matter what's happening here. But I mean, I've touched on a bunch of this throughout the show, but if I told you at the beginning of this that the Jets were going to get, erase Barry Trotz from this, because I think that's where this feeling comes from. The Jets were going after Barry Trotz. They didn't get him. So everything else from that point felt like a downgrade. But if I were to come to you at the beginning of this and told you, I'm going to get you one of 4 Stanley Cup four coaches that took their team to the Stanley Cup final in the last 3 years. I'm going to get you a coach that outcoached and outmaneuvered Jared Bednar, who just won a Stanley Cup and looked phenomenal doing it, and a Colorado roster that was a far superior roster, and did the same thing to Pete DeBoer and almost took down the Jack Adams coach this year. I mean, this to me sounds like exactly what anyone would have hoped for. And we know, Ken, from covering this Dallas team, this is a team that basically what you saw from them in their results was about the best that you could have expected from them. I truly believe that Bones got the best that you could get out of that Dallas roster in the time that he was there. Considering as well that this was a team that, was like bit really bad by COVID, probably worse than any other team the year that they just barely missed the playoffs and had their issues again this year. They had a whole bunch of games stacked up at the end of the year because of COVID issues. But the thing beyond everything for me is the talk that he keeps talking about of having hard conversations, of having expectations, of making sure that those expectations are known. I personally don't think that there's been enough of that in this organization over the last number of years. We've talked about it, Ken. I've ranted about it. This is an organization that liked to keep things quiet, that didn't like to talk about problems. And my take on it was always, listen, drag the skeleton out of the closet, show it to everybody, say, this is what we're dealing with. Let's get at it. Don't put it in the closet and say, well, there's nothing in the closet. I feel like that's been a little bit of what the Winnipeg Jets have done over the last number of years. And I don't know if you felt it today, Ken. I thought I did, but Rick Bowness comes out. There's not a question you don't ask him that he doesn't tackle directly and head on, because, again, he doesn't mind having tough conversations. I thought this was far and away the most open version of Kevin Cheveldayoff that we have ever seen, ever, on the time on the job. He took questions head on. He didn't hide from things. He didn't hide from questions. He didn't talk around questions and not try and give answers. Kevin Cheveldayoff was as direct as I've seen him. I think that this is an organization that is going to benefit from the real talk, from the hard conversations that have not been happening over the last number of years, and that Rick Bowness is going to drag it out. And I think that in the end will be the true value of him as a coach. Never mind, I believe he's tactical enough to be able to take on some of the best coaches in the NHL. I think it's a great hire. Last word for you, Ken.
Yeah, and I think this is very important that Kevin Cheveldayoff was listening to the people that were talking to him and probably gave some pretty direct answers in terms of how they viewed the organization. I know a lot of people are talking about John Tortorella getting an interview, and I think it's a smart move. I mean, get some opinions. I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff said it himself. They haven't had when they hired Paul Maurice as the interim coach, I think he's the only one that they talked to when they replaced Claude Noel with him. So, I think it was an important time for the organization to get some perspective, some outside perspective. And I think that the fact that they're talking about it openly shows some growth in terms of where the organization is at. I think it was very important for them to be doing that. And now it's going to be about how they apply it to their roster construction and their personnel, right? I mean, that's the other part. When you hear a bunch of things from coaches and other outside people about where your team is at, now it's about what they do in terms of their next moves. So that's what I'm going to be looking forward to in this next little stretch. We're going to have a draft preview show coming up. In the next couple of days here, we're going to nail down the times, but we're going to continue to roll out, I think, the four more shows here leading in to free agency. And just the last one about Tim. I mean, Tim Campbell's been the longest serving member of the media in this town for a long, long time, and he was a great person, a great mentor to be around in my early days covering the Manitoba Moose, and we just want to wish him all the best, as you did as well.
Excellent stuff. And we want to wish all the best and wish a lot of thanks to our chat room who came, awesome. Brought it today. I know things got a little bit, we're hearing you with the subs only chat. Yes, we find it annoying just as you do. We'll get on that for next time. We haven't really experienced this before. We want to acknowledge it because your comments mean the world to us, and we love making those part of the show. And we love the people who take it seriously or a little unseriously and like to give us the ribs here and there. That's actually my favorite stuff about it. But thank you so much for everyone who tuned in. Please come give us a check out this week. We've got lots of really great content that we wanted to hit up and make sure that you're prepared for the draft, prepared for free agency, prepared for everything that you need to know about the Winnipeg Jets as they kind of get out of the busy season here. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We will see you later on this week.